is going to be a fun one. What I want us to do in just this whole presentation is just treat it like a discussion. Most of you guys, oh, some of you here have already, you're my students, so you've seen this before, but this is a nice way for us to have a good conversation around the business of animation. And the best way of learning is repetition. If you engaging in these conversations as much as possible on multiple platforms, it sort of sinks in more. It starts becoming second nature, right? So I think what we'll do is also just for time's sake, what I'll do is I'll go through the presentation and you guys will just take notes. And then at the end of the presentation, we can have a discussion, a question and answer session. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm done.
You're done. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna, are we waiting? Should we go? What's happening, Jin Bean?
The event is now live, so you are free to take over.
All right. What's up? Alright. So,
What's up?
for those of you,
What's happening, yo?
yeah. All right. So, for those of you that don't know, my name is Sithembiso. I am the founder of Dipopaai Studios, which is a 2D and 3D animation studio that has been around for 7 years professionally in the animation industry and still growing. Initially, when we started in 2014, we were known as Partoon Studios. And then after some years, we decided to rebrand and just change our name to something more appealing to what it is that we stand for. And Dipopaai was pretty much that. Like, I mean, in my opinion, there's no better name to describe what we do, especially in the context of Africa, because what Dipopaai means, it's a colloquial Sotho term that is commonly used by South Africans and Africans all over Africa to describe animation. I remember I was in Tanzania like 3 years ago, and they refer to cartoons as Popeye, Mapopeye, sorry, and in Swaziland as well, and all over South Africa in general. In Zulu, it's Amapopeye, and where this comes from is Popeye the Sailor Man, because in many of these countries, that was the first animation that was ever shown, and so because it was the first time a lot of Africans got to engage with animation, Popeye, that then became the term for animation, because there was no term for animation before that. So, I mean, come on, that's a no-brainer. Everywhere you go, it's Popeye, Popeye, I'm a Popeye, Dipopaai, and people connect with that. And in different areas, it sort of holds a similar but significant meaning depending on where you are. In some places, I mean, if people refer to you as a Popeye, it's usually, it means you're a joke, or you're funny, you're like a cartoon, you know what I mean? You're outlandish in your nature, and I thought that was pretty interesting. So here are some of the guys that we've worked with, over the years. There's much more, but I just didn't want to kill you guys. I was just like, okay, let's be humble, And I mean, this journey, the 7-year journey that I was on, like literally coming out of varsity and straight into the working environment, I had no tools. Myself and my business partners, we had no tools regarding business, because this is one subject that in schools, especially in varsities and just tertiary institutions, that they don't focus on the business of animation. Though they do focus heavily on the technical side of things, where you'll understand how to use the software so well, but how you then take that and turn it into a profit is tough. That gap is so huge and so large, where I find a lot of people coming into the industry with no knowledge, no soft skills, and that usually leaves you in a position where you're often exploited and disgruntled and unhappy about the industry, because you're not as informed. And fortunately for us, we I mean, we figured it out by, we're still on the road, but we figured it out through trial and error. And I think after this session, maybe a little bit of it will be demystified to most of you guys. Um, but one of the first questions I had to ask myself was, I've got this burning idea. Like, I want to create animated content because I feel like there's not enough African animation or animation that represents me that currently exists. But how do I then bridge that gap? What's the vehicle that I use? These were the questions I kept asking myself, as I was getting into, the entrepreneur space. Like, what is it? What is a business? What is a business? And I got to understand that a business is an occupation trade of the sale of products or services to make a profit. Okay, to make a profit. That part of it all just stuck in my head because I was like, that's essentially what I need to be doing. I need to make a profit. I need to use these skills that I've learned over the past 4 years, um, working in animation, studying, learning the softwares. I need to translate that information and that education into a profit. And yeah, it's been an uphill battle since, but it became more easier and more smoother for me and my business partners the more we understood what it is that we were doing, the more we took time to learn about the business of animation. And what we found is business has one language throughout. In any industry that you get into, business is business. And once you understand and once you speak the business language, you then are able to generate a profit. And yeah, like I said, it's been an amazing journey. It's been a long one, and we found ourselves, like I said, trial and error, where we were in a situation where we didn't understand how to even just raise funds. And doing the research in 2017, me and my business partner decided, okay, we're not gonna animate anything. Instead, we're gonna spend this entire year understanding the principles of business, what it is, how it works, and how we can feature in that space. What thinking do you need to have so that you can operate and be successful in that space? It's kind of like you spend so much time working or learning the animation principles, right? You spend so much time understanding how animation works, gesture drawing, and you don't do that all in one day. You keep practicing over and over. It becomes like your religion. It becomes a ritual. It becomes a routine. You draw every day 1 hour you're drawing. Same thing with business. You have to practice it continuously so that you understand it more and you're able to maneuver better. And you'll find in many instances you'll also be able to identify opportunities that you weren't really even thinking of. Finance, which are how much does it cost, you know? And I remember looking at all of these things and thinking, okay, like, okay, cool. I need to first understand where am I going to get my money? Who am I selling my product to? What is my product, and how much is my product going to cost? Those were the main key things. And in understanding those, we were able to then build a business model, right? But then you go into the next phase and you're like, okay, sharp, what kinds of business models exist? Now, there's a large number of business models. I just focused on these four because these are the four key business models that speak to what I do in animation and what you guys do as well as animators. So there's business to business. I'm sure you guys have heard the fancy B2B. People always trying to sound fancy, like, "Oh, B2B. No, this is a B2C kind of situation. Oh, no, this is a C2B." I was telling my class that one time I've been in so many meetings where people had used this jargon or this word, this language, and I never knew what they were talking about. And so I had to go back into the drawing board. And I think one key thing to also mention here is in every space that I got into, starting in the business journey, I was always the youngest in the room. So being the youngest in the room, you always tend to you're fighting two battles. You're fighting the one battle of being hurt because you're young. There's already that notion that you don't know what you're talking about. You're naive, you know? And you're also fighting the battle to prove yourself all the time. You're proving yourself constantly. And that forced us to actually know exactly what it is that we're talking about. So
Hi, Steph. Sorry
business
to
to
interrupt.
business, otherwise,
Sorry to
yes,
interrupt. It seems your stream has somewhat died.
yes,
Would you like me to take over screening for you?
really.
Yeah.
Oh yes, please. Oh man, yes, please do, please do. Yeah, the network is a bit bumpity bump. Going to Genie Beanie. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah, I
you,
can
yo.
hear you.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah,
I can
guys,
hear
sorry
you.
about that. It's storming where I'm at, so the network is, yeah, it's kind of lagging. Okay, we can go to slide number 6, Genie. Yeah, cool. So where was I? All right. Business to business, otherwise called B2B, describes a situation where a business engages in sales or products and services in other businesses. Um, feel like there's an echo in the background. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's much better. So, business to business simply is, I mean, it says it in the word. It's two businesses working together, right? Coming together to do business. Usually, this is the more, I'd say, the easiest, one of the easiest forms of business because we all have our own models. We come through, we trade the services together, and that's done. It's simple, straight to the point. Business to consumer, this was essentially how we started in the animation industry because we created IP, which is a show called Chronicles of Hip Hop. We created that show, we put it on YouTube, and it was straight to our audience. So, business to consumer is a business producing a product directly to the audience, to your consumer. And I find that to be the best form of the best model because what that does is it gives you sort of a taste or an indication of what your audience is looking for because you're servicing them directly and you're able to see if your product is good for the market or is not. And because it's happening also in real time, you're able to adjust certain things. So when we were creating Chronicles, the first episode that we put out was monochromatic. And then we realized, okay, we've got views. Maybe let's try adding color. Second episode, we added color. Third episode, we're like, man, let's maybe use photos or real life images with animation. Let's put those two together. And we kept on building, but this was all based off the information we were getting back from our consumers. So I think this is one that I think, especially for individuals that are trying to get into business, this is the best model that you can focus on, direct to consumer. It's also good for your brand as well. And then consumer to business. Consumer to business is one of those tricky ones because I mean, as a business, you usually have all you're established basically, right? You know what you're trying to, your targets, your goals for the year. You know what you're trying to achieve as a business. And for when a consumer does business with when a consumer, yeah, does business with a business, it's usually harder for them to convince because you need to sell your idea to this business. And the only way your idea can get bought is if it's in line with what the business is trying to do or what the business stands for, or if it ticks the KPIs, the key performance index. If it touches on what the business is trying to achieve, that's when this will work out. And usually, in many instances, the businesses want to undercut the consumer, because it's like, we can do it without you. We have the resources, we have the setup to do this. You're presenting an idea to us, and it kind of becomes tricky for the consumer. So it's good for the business. It's good for the consumer if you bag a good deal. Usually, in this instance, it's when you have your first idea, you sell that idea so that you can be able to gain capital to create your next ideas, which you then won't be, it'll be a business to business kind of setup. Depending on what you're trying to do. And then a consumer to consumer type of business model. It's more new in terms of business relations. And this would be like your Netflix, for instance. Your Netflix, in this case, would be a consumer to consumer, because what they do, or a broadcaster, for example, what they do is they get content from a business, a studio. They get the content and they just host it on their platform. And then the consumers buy into that content. So you're a middleman, essentially, as a consumer to consumer. So broadcasters and public platforms, they normally engage in this kind of business model. And so, having understood all of these four models, I was like, okay, cool. These are the main four keys that I'll be playing in, and we can move on to the next slide. Yes, yeah, I know it's a lot of information coming in, but having understood those four business models, I began making more informed decisions about how I move forward. We can move on to the next slide. Yeah. And then I got to understand that there are three key roles that you can play in business, okay? You can either be an employee, a freelancer, and an entrepreneur, right? And obviously, we all know the three. And I want to demystify the notion that if you're an employee, you're lesser than an entrepreneur, or if you're an entrepreneur, you're better than a freelancer. And it's really, guys, it all depends on who you are and what you want in life. All of these three key roles in business, all of them have their pros and they have their cons. And it's up to you to decide as an individual what speaks to you, what makes sense, right? But just understanding the key roles is very, very important. Like an employee is someone who gets paid to work for a person or a company, usually at a non-executive level. That's usually, not to say that it's never at an executive level, but it's usually at that level. What you call the CEO could easily be an employee, you know what I mean? A freelancer or freelance worker is a person who's self-employed and not necessarily committed to a particular employer for long term, all right? And then an entrepreneur is an individual who creates a business bearing most of the risk, caps lock, bearing most of the risks in the hopes to make a profit. The entrepreneur is commonly seen as an innovator, a source of new ideas, goods, services, and business procedures. That's only if the entrepreneur is successful, If not successful, you're seen as a failure. That's pretty much it. And just having listed the three, you now have to look at also what are the pros and cons. An employee pros, income security. Okay, that's the biggest relief for anyone. Every month you're gonna get a certain amount of money at a certain time of the month, and you don't need to stress. It's comfortable, right? Those are the pros. That's why most people want that. It's financial freedom in that sense. You also get your employee benefits. Usually your company will sort out your tax for you. They'll set you up, your UIF, your retirement fund, all of these employee benefits, your medical aid, all of that is structured and set up for you by the company that's employed you. And you Another pro would be you're able to separate your life from, like you've got your set hours, 9 to 5. That's when you're at work. Anything after that, nah. This is your personal time. You can build a family. You can, do whatever you need to do if that's what that's the type of person you are. So that's one. Well, those are the pros of being an employee. And most people find it, well, most of my friends find that very comfortable. They prefer that because it's less stressful. The only con about being an employee is that, man, you've got this invisible ceiling, right? Most people don't. You can only go as far as the corporate ladder within the company that you're in, and most companies don't. They don't promote. They don't. I mean, once you're in there as an animator, you'll probably be there for like 10 years, and then they'll probably promote you to like lead animator, and it's a slow process, right? Your level of growth is literally marginalized, and you're stuck in that company that you're in. That's the con. And I find that most people that are like just employees over a long period of time tend to get a bit depressed later in their years, and tend to want to do different things because they haven't been given that opportunity working in one space. We can move on to the next slide. Yeah, freelancer, which is most of you in this in this call. I mean, as a freelancer, your ability to grow is so high, and it's a good thing because you get to work with different clients, you get to work with different people, you get to network, and that's usually good for morale. It's good for yourself as an individual because you're exposed to so much. You also have status and income, of course, right? You get to choose how much you want to get paid. So you dictate what your amount is, your salary is. You dictate, and it's not consistent throughout. Um, but you're at the deciding table when it comes to that. And by status, I mean whenever you get into an environment, you could get into an environment with an employee that's been there for 6 years and you're there for 2 months, but in that space you'll be considered the professional because you're a freelancer. You're coming in with these expertise. You're the one that's, and you're most probably going to get paid more than they get paid to do the same thing, which is, there's always that dynamic between employees and freelancers, especially when they work together in the same space, because the treatment's different, and it's always hilarious to see. And another important factor is time, right? You have the time. The time is in your hands. You can wake up today and decide not to do anything. You know what I mean? You can wake up today and say, you know what, today I am just gonna just lay in bed and watch series and binge. That's literally what you have, and you can decide on how you want to work with, how you want to arrange your time or schedule your time to work on the projects that you're working on. So those are the pros. We can go down. And the cons. Okay, so unlike an employee where you've got an establishment that helps you set up all your tax, your UIF, your employee benefits, here you need to do that all yourself. It's a lot of admin that you need to do yourself, or it's either you pay someone else to do it for you, but that becomes your responsibility. There are no employee benefits, so no, what do you call it, retirement fund. You need to make that happen yourself. You're responsible for handling all of that. Also, no work, no pay. You can't, there's no such thing as unpaid leave, or paid leave rather, sorry. There's no such thing as paid leave as a freelancer. It's either you have money or you don't, you know? And another con is the inconsistency of getting work. Sometimes there's just no work, okay? And you have to resort to doing your own thing, creating your own IP, and doing other things to make sure that you generate an income. Okay, move down to the next slide. Entrepreneur, boom, 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 boom. This is my favorite, and obviously I'm biased. You guys, you already know this, but the only pro I can say, or there's two, but the main one is you are the boss. There's a level of freedom that comes with being an entrepreneur, but at the same time, it's a trap. Okay, it's freedom, but it's a trap. And I mean, the level at which you grow as an individual is crazy, because everything falls on your lap. Essentially, you are a problem solver all the time. 24/7, you're a problem solver. You're constantly thinking of innovative ways to sell your business, generate a profit, grow your industry, educate people, train people, and you're always like, you're at the cusp of just, meeting new people, networking, you're growing and you're learning a lot about yourself. And it requires a particular individual to become an entrepreneur. In actual fact, all of these three roles that we've just discussed now, they require a particular person to fit in any one of them. And like I said, it doesn't mean now because you choose to be an employee,
Going
you're
very well.
less than an employer or an entrepreneur. No, I know employees that earn more than a lot of
Sorry?
entrepreneurs, financially are living
Yeah, stay.
much better lives than entrepreneurs.
I'm
This
literally
whole
doing no
story
talking.
and notion that as an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur, you've made it. No, you know what I'm saying? It's only when you're successful that it's like, oh, let's go. But most entrepreneurs, man, hey, it's tough. For the first 3, 4 years of your life, it's tough. No income whatsoever. And just going into the cons, yes, there will be no assurance of income in the initial days. When we started, I think the first 2 years of animation, we barely made a profit. In fact, it was just us just reinvesting into the business. All the amount of money we made, we bought equipment, we had company overheads, so your rent, your utilities, your internet, all of that, that's what we were working towards. And then after some time, that's when we started seeing profit. But even so, the profit wasn't like crazy. It wasn't enough to, sustain our lifestyles. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that you need to be prepared for if you're going to be an entrepreneur. That's if you're going in there without startup capital already, if you don't have investments already. Bankruptcy is a real thing. I've known people that I used to look up to and think, wow, this is how I want to be, and rightfully so. I still want to be like that, but over some time they've had to close shop because I mean they're taking on all the risk, right? As an entrepreneur, you have to be a calculated risk taker, and sometimes you make the wrong call, which can affect your business. You need to raise funds yourself. Like literally, you need to be out there in the streets. You need to be not even in the streets, but just out there meeting people and selling yourself. My first investor, which was essentially how Partin started, was a guy I met on the set of Movango, the TV series, and I had to pitch on set, pitch to this guy like, "Yo, man, here's my idea." I had my little laptop there, put it on my lap. I showed him some of my animation, and I had to sit there and convince him to give me money to create my own ideas and potentially, or yeah, with the potential for him to earn a little from that idea that I've created that he's invested in. So I had to convince someone to take a risk. That is not an easy thing to do, okay, especially depending on the amount of money you're asking for. So it requires you to be a certain kind of salesperson, and you need to be convincing. Okay, you yourself as an entrepreneur, you need to believe in what it is that you're selling. You have to embody it when you speak. People need to be like, yes, yes, okay, yeah, 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 no, I believe this guy. He knows what he's talking about, and that requires you to do a lot of research. um, and also another con is, there will be no fixed working hours, so you're consistently on the job. I mean, this is something that I'm struggling with, but you never get, like, your time is not entirely yours. Sunday, 4 a.m. in the morning, if something goes wrong in your business, you're the person that needs to wake up and sort it out, right? You're working overtime constantly. Your time belongs to your business. I mean, I remember, initially in the initial days, I didn't even have a personal life. you know I didn't have a social life. I didn't have a like partners, like dating. My dating clout was just whack. You know what I'm saying? I was just off the grid. My girlfriend was my business. It was tough. And that's essentially like it's bad for you, you know, because you find yourself constantly working. And because you're constantly working, that becomes your dialogue. You're always speaking about work, you know? So you have to be conscious about that as well to try and, you know, separate your hours. But that's a challenge that you work on constantly over and over as an entrepreneur. So now we've seen the three, right? Employee, freelancer, and entrepreneur. We've discussed the pros and the cons, right? We go to the next frame. This was me. Like now I'm like, damn, my God. Oh man. Oh man. Oh man. Can move on to the next frame. Stressful. But as I said, like being an entrepreneur, I mean, being an entrepreneur or being a freelancer or being an employee, it requires a certain person, a certain individual. None is less, none is more than the other. It's just being an entrepreneur is glorified more than the rest because you take on so much risk and it requires a lot out of you. And if you're able to succeed in that environment, then obviously you'll get all the praise. But being a freelancer is pretty much being a hybrid of both, you know, employee as well as, you know, entrepreneur, because you're unlike an entrepreneur where you have a business, you are the business, okay? And you literally have to work around your time to sort of balance all of this. And as an employee, I mean, you're still contributing to an organization that needs you for it to succeed. So in any case, it's all the same in my opinion, right? And in every area as an artist, all you're ever doing is solving problems, right? You're always solving problems. And if you're not doing that, then I'm concerned about you as an artist, you know? Maybe, you know, need to relook at what it is that you're doing. We can move on to the next frame. Okay. So I had now decided what I wanted to do, right? Which is being an entrepreneur. Cool. But being an entrepreneur now, you got to build, okay, you got to build a model that will work, all right? That will help you take your business from one place to another. But that requires a certain kind of thinking, okay? And this also applies for freelancers and just employees as well. Like you have to have a kind of thinking, you have to solve problems, you know? And the first thing that you need to do is have an internal conversation. What is it that I want to do, right? That's the first conversation you have with yourself. And once you've identified what that is, then you're able to move on to the next step, right? So you need to identify a problem area in which your skill set or information or product will make an impact. This usually the most challenging part. This is, I won't lie, it took us a while for us to actually figure out exactly what it is we wanted to do within the animation space. And once we had figured it out, we were then able to then move accordingly. Okay, move on to the next frame. Then the second step was now we needed to identify our audience, right? You need to know who you're selling to because that's essentially where your money is going to come from. If you're an employee, you need to identify the companies you want to work for because you feel like, no, those companies will take me to or will help me get to the place that I want to get to in life. If you're a freelancer, same thing. You need to identify who it is that you want to sell your skills to, right? As an entrepreneur, we had to look at the target audience that we wanted to communicate to. And like most of us in this group, what's in this session, what started the journey into animation was the lack of representation in African animation or lack of African animation on TV. That's what started it for me. Like I was just like, I don't see enough of myself here. And I feel like there's a huge untapped market that is ready to consume this content. It can't just be me, you know? And the more I began having this conversation, I started like seeing that, oh shucks, I'm not the only one. These guys feel the same way. And it's in different areas. And so that gave me more confidence to say, okay, let's keep producing content for these people because clearly it's a growing demand. So targeting a wide audience won't allow you to hone in on customers who truly need who truly need and want your service. Instead, when creating your business model, narrow your audience down to 2 or 3 detailed buyer personas. we had to now identify, because I mean, there's a nice quote that says, if you try, like, appeal to everyone, you end up appealing to no one. You need to be specific, very specific about who you're trying to talk to and why you're trying to talk to those people, because you understand either their language, you understand where they're from, you understand their demographic, but you need to be specific. And by doing that, you understand their buyer personas. You start getting data around how they perform, how they do things, what they like, when they like what they like. And that then informs however you create your product, because now you've got a specific audience. And then what usually happens after that is, because you've done that, that audience then they become your ambassadors, and then it grows. Your audience and your market grows because you focused on one and you've had a single line message throughout, as opposed to saying everything all at once and trying to talk to everyone. It's always a challenge. Can go down to the next frame. Yeah, it's a stressful, it's a stressful. Yeah, we could go down. That's just the break. How's everyone feeling so far?
So far, enjoying this.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we are, man.
Yeah. I'm ready for your guys' questions. I want us to engage more in the chats side of things. But I just want us to be on the same page with regards to what it is. And a lot of this information is very, it's stuff that most of you already know or have thought about, but necessarily haven't had the language to sort of just pin it down. And I think it's important to do that, because the more you understand, or the more words you know to describe something, the better you understand it. And the more you're able to then move from an informed POV. So that will then help you with your creative process, your decision making. Now, when you're creating a show, instead of just creating a show for the sake of creating a show because it's cool and it's fun, now you're thinking of the audience, because they're going to buy your show, right? Now you're thinking of the type of content. What's the messaging? Why am I creating it this way? Because it's informed by my audience. Before you even create it, you're thinking that way. So by the time you're done, you're guaranteed some success, because you know exactly why you're creating and what you're trying to say. I think a lot of us animators get trapped in that loop where you just want to create things that you like for the sake of, you think it's fun and you have this dream, it's nice. But that thinking needs to be applied to ensure that you make a profit. Okay, cool. Now, I'm still on the frame. So what you want to do now is establish once you've identified your audience, what you want to do now is establish a business process, right? So before your business can go live, you need to have an understanding of the activities required to make your business model work. Determine key business activities by first identifying the core aspect of your business offering. Are you responsible for providing a service? Are you shipping a product? What are you doing? And once you know what you're doing, you're able to talk about it, you're able to sell it. You know what I'm saying? So the process of creating this thing, you need to figure that out. Can move on to the next frame. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jin Bean. So this is also another key area that a lot of us don't do in our workflow, right? Which is recording everything that you have. So if you look on your right, you see at the top, got all these little cogs and levers and gears, right? Essentially, what you want to do is take all of that and turn it into a nice Ferrari engine. You want to create something that works. You want to build systems that work before you even go live. Before you even start talking to your audience, your product needs to make sense internally, right? and that requires you to do a lot of like testing, recording, writing, and just tracking yourself and tracking your process. That then becomes your IP, your value, like how you do things as a business is what separates you from everyone else. Once you've recorded that and once you have that, you're able to then duplicate it. You're able to then do all of these things, with your business because you have that system in place. I won't lie. It's been 2 years now that I've started practicing building systems, and in 2017 when we stopped animating and just focused on like just building systems, that's literally all we did. We looked at the work that we had done before. We looked at what was common about everything we did, how we created animation. Our process of animation was literally we had no scripts. We didn't do any script writing. We literally had a microphone in the middle of the room. It was always on. If you had an idea, you just stood in front of the microphone and you just said whatever was funny. I used to have dreams and step up on the mic and then talk about my dreams and be like, yeah, so in this episode, this is what happens. And it was all freestyled. But what that does is that though that may be a fun process or fun way of creating animation, it's very exciting. It's not sustainable in that if you want to expand and get a team or grow, it's hard for them to come in and sort of pick up from where you left off because nothing's been recorded. There's no template. There's no system in place that can help induct new fresh blood into your organization unless they're your friends or unless they spend a lot of time with you. And it just became unsustainable. And so we had to understand things like script writing. If you write a script, anyone can read a script. Okay, cool. Now we've added tools into our system. Okay, fine. How's about we do character designs before we just freestyle the characters? Because that's how we do. We never did character turnarounds when we started. We just, hey, here's a script. Here's a recording of a funny thing. Here's a funny drawing. I'm the only guy doing the drawing. Whenever someone else in the team tries to do the drawing, it looks weird because there weren't any character turnarounds, expressions. There was nothing in place, those systems. So those are the things that I'm referring to, especially, and I'm just being specific in terms of just production. But what does your company need to do to carry out daily processes, find new customers, and reach business goals? Document essential business resources to ensure your business model is adequately prepared to sustain the needs of your business. Common resources examples may include a website, capital, warehouse, intellectual property, and customer lists. So all of the things that you need to ensure that your business is running, you need to consider and you need to write that down. It has to be on paper or written somewhere that this is what the business is, right? This is how it's structured. And because we tend to forget, right? So whenever you find yourself forgetting, you always go back and it's there on paper. And it's literally helped us a lot. We've always had to go back to some of the stuff we wrote in 2017 to say, actually, this is what we do. This is who we are whenever we're moving. Obviously considering innovation, but this helps. Can move on to the next frame. Yeah. And now, at this point, you've already figured out what it is that you do, right? How you do it, how it works, you understand what it is, but what is your value proposition? And I always mention this to my students to say, this part of it all, this is what literally dictates whether you will make hella amounts of profit or not, because this separates you from everyone else in your industry, right? The stronger your value proposition, man, it gives you a reason or a license to exist as an entrepreneur, as a freelancer, as an employee. What is it about you that separates you from everyone else? How will your company, how will your offering stand out among the competition? You're not the only person that's creating animation. I'm not the only person that sees that there's not enough African animated content or content that represents my culture or my nuance or my language. I'm not the only one that's thinking that. But what is it about me that separates, my offering from everyone else? And it's like once you've cracked this part of it all, you literally, like I said, it gives you a license to exist freely. And this is what people want from you. So even when you get interviews, people want to know your value proposition. Ooh, you know, do you provide an innovative service, a revolutionary product, or a new twist on an old favorite? Establishing exactly what your business offers and why is better than why it's better than competitors is the beginning of a strong value proposition. So you must always be aware of your environment, guys. What's happening around you, you know, that also needs to inform your decisions when you're moving. A lot of the time as animators, what we do is we're recluses, right? We keep to ourselves, we keep to our minds, we keep to, you know, what we like and what we want to do, and not necessarily, you know, taking the time to do some of this research and seeing where we differ from everyone else. You know, I look at a lot of portfolios a lot of the time and I'm like, ah, man, there's not even a signature style here. It just looks like manga. Ay, ay, ay. And I get bored and I'm like, ah, some animators, they just copying, which is not a bad thing, right? It's not a bad thing because you can still, you know, be successful in that. But in many instances, you're more successful when you have a unique value proposition, when you have that one quality that separates you from everyone else. We can move on to the next slide. Okay, so now you've identified exactly about how your business works. You've identified who your audience is, who your market is. You've identified, you know, your what separates you from everyone else. And now you need to partner up with individuals that will help you now. This is where you go out of your business now, right? The first 5 steps were just you internally. The next is now you're going out there and you're finding partnerships. My business partner was a friend that I went to school with. We went to varsity together and we just shared similar insights. And at the back of my mind, I was always like, man, this guy, we need to partner up with this guy because we may not. Okay, cat's out the bag. I'll be honest. Cat's out the bag. Yeah, KK is gonna kill me for this. But anyway, you know, in varsity, we never liked each other. Well, he never liked me. There was a bit of a tension point between us, but there was respect. You know, there was respect in the art and respect in the love for animation. Right? We shared a lot of similar values in that regard, which made it easier for us to partner up, even though essentially we weren't the best of friends, because that's what a lot of people think, right? You think you want to get into business with your besties, and usually in many instances that doesn't work out. The partnerships that you want to make are with people that share the same vision, not with people that you like. Yeah, you may like them, it's cool, but not that shouldn't be the driver that determines whether your partnership will be successful or not. Oh, I like this guy. We're gonna be successful together. No, no, it doesn't work that way. All right. You need to find partners that now that you've had your 5 steps and you're at this point where you've understood your value proposition, your audience, you need to align yourself with people that speak to that same thinking, that same principle. So no business can function properly, let alone reach established goals without key partners that contribute to the business ability to serve customers. When creating a business model, select key partners like suppliers, strategic alliances, or advertising partners. Using the previous example of okay, yeah, that's fine. So from every value or from every part of the value chain, right, you need partners. So my business partner, KK, he is my production partner. I know when we're together, we're able to produce the work, but we need a lawyer, right? Someone that's going to handle the legal stuff, because that's another part of business that you know we do not have the capacity to do. So we partner up with a lawyer. Hey, we need an accountant, someone that's going to handle the books, someone that's going to handle the paperwork, someone that's going to keep the company afloat financially, because it's easy to, go through funds, especially as an animator, you know what I mean? Especially as a young, not even animator, a young guy who likes flashy things. It's easy for money to just start, not adding up at the end of the month, at the end of the year. It's like, So you need an accountant. You need investors to invest into the business. You need broadcasters to help you, or distributors to help you distribute your product. You need partners in various places. And in many instances, if we're being absolutely honest, most of the time together. But at the core of it all, what brings you all together is the vision of the business. So be careful when selecting partners, guys. You know what I'm saying? And it's not wrong to select partners. It's just be careful
Did you? Yeah.
Might be raining on his parade a little bit.
Lol.
Hey,
Is that a bad rain pun?
I do not know what's going on. Where am I? Oh, yes. Just getting back into the. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So it's just always being mindful of your partners, right? The people that you partner up with. What needs to lead at its core is the vision, not the relationship. Oh, we are friends, we like each other. Oh, we like the same music. Let's go. No, it's how do we all contribute to the success of this business? What do we bring to the table? You know, um, that's what I found, and also putting in place contracts and agreements between us, and nothing being verbal. Because when you have your friends, you tend to have a level of trust that goes beyond business, that borders on informal. A lot of things get swept under the rug, and they tend to get emotional. When you're choosing your partners, try not to be emotional about it. Okay, yes, we're human. We do business with people versus business with businesses. We do business with people, but at the back of it, always consider that. And this is just me coming from experience, saying, yo, yeah, we can move on to the next frame. Just saying, like, I've been burnt before from thinking that your friends are your best business partners. No, no, no. But not to say that you can't be business partners with your friends. No, no, no. Don't get that wrong. Just don't lean heavily on that notion that to have a successful business, you need to have friends. You've seen Facebook, the movie. Okay. So now that you have your partners, now that you have your value proposition, you have everything in order, you need to now create a demand. So now this is you now taking your, from up until this point, everything has been internal. All right. It's been stuff that you've been doing internally. Now, this is where you go out to your audience. All right. If we maybe saying you're an employee, right? Let's use an employee as an example. Up until this point, you've set up your portfolio, you've created your LinkedIn account, you've identified the clients or the studios that you want to work for. So you've set yourself up, you've put up the work that you know will be more appealing to them, right? And now what you want to do is you want to create a demand for yourself. So what do? You start sending your CV out, start sending your portfolio out, start sending your show reel out. Same thing with a freelancer, right? You've set yourself up, and now this is the part where you go out and you start selling yourself. And you find creative ways of selling yourself that will make you stand out from everyone else. As an entrepreneur myself, creating the demand now was actually creating the product and putting it out there, and then consistently putting it out there so that people are hooked. And one anomaly that I never understood, but and then, but obviously now I get, was I used to think if you upload one video on YouTube or whatever, that's all it takes, right? You upload one video and it could be the most fire video, like the most amazing video you've ever created, and then it has 100 views. But the more you keep uploading videos, the more you keep uploading and the more you're consistent with your uploads, the more you begin to create a following. So it's people like consistency is what I found. People want to know that on Thursday, every week at 3 p.m., I am going to get this show. That trust that you build with your audience, that's the demand. When you stop dropping stuff on Thursday, 3 p.m., that's when now people are like, what's going on? Withdrawal symptoms, when we stopped creating chronicles of hip hop. When is the next one coming? When? And it's like, yes, that's what you want to do, right? You want people to want your stuff, and consistency, especially in our industry, that's what sells. So you may create one good video, just one, and it's the best thing you've ever done. But if you create just one, the chances of your demand or your success will be limited. But the more you create, the higher your levels of creating that demand will be. But yeah, unless you're taking a radical approach to launching your company, you'll need a strategy that builds interest in your business, generates leads, and is designed to close sales. So also finding ways to market your stuff, finding cool ways to market your stuff. So what we did was we looked at our audience and we understood, okay, our consumers like going to concerts. They really enjoy going to concerts. Who can we partner up with that hosts or that has an event, like a concert event? Which artists can we tap into? And we collaborated with musicians because we knew they get our audience. Collaborated with them, and at these concerts, we began airing our animation. So what that does is now we're targeting our audience in their place of comfort. So they don't need to go too far to find us. We're coming to them where they are, you know? And what that does is it builds an even more level of loyalty from the consumers. It's like, what? I saw this on YouTube. I'm at this concert. It's here. Oh my God. I'm on Instagram. It's there. Oh, flip. I'm on Twitter. People are talking about it. You're creating that demand. You're everywhere. You're becoming top of mind. When people think of animation, now they think, yo, Dipopaai. That's what you want to do. Same as an employee. You want to be that employee that's like, well, depending on the type of individual you are. I did say it's very like, it depends on you, you know? But you want companies to discuss you. Like, yo, we had said individual working with us for 3 years and they did XYZ. Oh, you want to be headhunted because like the stuff that you do is really amazing as a freelancer as well. You just want to be in a space where people just they want you, man. I don't know how else to put it. Can move on to the next frame. And then the last one, guys, and this is where a lot of studios, individuals fail in many instances, is their inability to innovate, right? Because the world is always changing and the world is always improving. There's always new ways of doing things, technology coming in. It's like, I feel bad for broadcasters like SABC, which really, if we're being absolutely honest, SABC has the largest number of viewers because it's a free platform. It's available. It's got the most eyeballs, right? But they're not innovating. So you get the likes of MultiChoice coming in and the likes of Netflix coming in and tapping into the new way of consuming content. It's not to say that now SABC, like they're not making, or they don't have what it takes, or they suck. It's just they haven't innovated and therefore they're pushed out of the conversation, even though they have the largest pool of viewers, right? Even the business model has changed now. It's the advertising for because that's how SABC makes their revenue, right? They rely heavily on advertising. So you look at platforms like Netflix, there's no adverts there, right? It's subscription based. That's how they make their revenue. And it's, just moving with the times is what will keep you relevant and what will keep you afloat. You understand? So at every point, you always have to be reinventing yourself, finding new ways of doing what you do best that is still relevant. If you're an employee, it's learning new software, you know how do you learn new software to animate better or animate quicker? Freelancer, same thing. Animator, I mean, entrepreneur, you have to always find new ways to tap into your audience. Looking at using social media, for instance, when we started, social media was still like, it was 2014, social, like YouTube, having 1,000 views in 1 week on YouTube at that time was a big deal. It was like, what? You have 1,000 views on YouTube? It was a big, now, you have 1,000 views on YouTube, you're a beginner. You're like, so what? 1,000, get out of here, man. But the more you keep like innovating, the more you become relevant, the more you stay relevant, the more you grow, you know. Yeah, when launching a company and developing a business model, your business plan is based on many assumptions. After all, until you begin to welcome paying customers, you don't truly know if your business model will meet their ongoing needs. For this reason, it's important to leave room for future innovations. I mean, in this day and age, I get weirded out at animation studios that are discussing animation without mentioning gaming. It's like, wow, do you see where this conversation is going? People want to consume content that they can engage with. You know what I'm saying? People, that's where we're going. People want to be able to be part of the creation process where they can make decisions. I don't know if you guys know Black Mirror, where they had an episode where you could decide what's happening. You could tell your story. You look at games like Sims. That's where everyone's going. Gaming, like interactive storytelling. If we're not engaging in that conversation, soon enough you're gonna find yourself in a place where you're obsolete, nyana. And so you always need to leave room for innovation in whatever it is that you're doing. I think that is the last frame. Let's go down. Let's see. Ah, yes. And just like that, it is done. Yeah. 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 Okay. What is the process of informing artists about? Oh, okay. So, I mean, it's the same as when we're employing local artists, right? You literally just look at it. It's not a one size fits all process because it depends on what you're looking for, right? You're looking for an animator, you're looking for a storyboard artist, and the process is usually simple. We put out a call out, and we hope for the best applicants to send, put them up and have an internal discussion, and then have an interview with the individual, see if they're happy with the finance or the budget that we have. We also look at things like soft skills, like does this person communicate well, right? Are they able to express that they are struggling with whatever part of the of whatever part of animation, whatever it is? Do they need help? Are they able to easily communicate? And are they a team player? That's essentially the kind of things we look for, because if you're unable to communicate, you could be the dopest animator, I don't give a damn, but if you're unable to communicate and you're unable to be a team player, you're useless. So we look for that kind of stuff. And from a technical point is we'll create an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement between us and the employee, to state that they cannot discuss any of the stuff that we're doing. They cannot post up any of the work while we're still in production. We're not as bad as most studios. Like I know Disney's very strict, but will allow you to post up your work that you've done on your personal platforms like Instagram, as long as it's not a paid platform like YouTube. We're fine with you uploading your content there, but we'll generally let you sign. We'll let them sign NDAs and then a formal contract that states exactly what it is that they're going to be doing and how well they'll be remunerated at which days and the deliverables expected of them. And failure to do so, obviously, they'll get 3 warnings and a termination if that persists. But it's essentially the same as any working environment. And the other question was about tax. So with the tax situation, we generally enjoy employing freelance artists more than permanent employees. And we find that easier because then they handle the tax themselves. We're not trying to handle people's tax. It's a lot of admin, you know. So we just agree on the amount, we pay that amount, including the tax, and then we let the freelancer work that out themselves. And you'll find this happen in a lot of studios because we work on a project to project basis, and most of the projects aren't long term. They aren't long term enough for us to even consider taxes and stuff like that, you know, or UIF, which is your what do you call this? Your pension fund stuff. Yeah, your unemployment fund and your pension funds. We usually don't employ people for long periods, 6 months, 8 months, and then we're done. Yeah. I don't know if, I think that I've answered your question. Can we move on to the next one? So again, Kamu, there's no one size fits all answer, right? You can get investors literally everywhere. But I'll tell you from my experience, it's always been people that aren't in animation. It's always been individuals that like the idea of animation and maybe have consumed it, they watch it, not really clued up on how it works. Those are the individuals that rely on you to educate them, all right? Because now you need to also educate them and teach them about animation so that they can invest and buy into it. And also, once you teach them, you need to show them that you are the right person to work with or to invest in. And how you do that is you do your research. One of the ways that I always start my conversations when I'm speaking to investors, because I know how investors think, they're thinking money. Imagine, put yourself in their shoes, for instance. You've got 1 million rand, right? You want to invest in something, but you want to know for sure, at least 80%, that you will make a profit, that 1 million will come back as 1 million, 1.5 million, you know, or 2 million. You want to know that and you want that guarantee. So if I come to you as an entrepreneur and I present information like, so the animation industry is worth 636 billion and growing exponentially, and South Africa just owning less than 0.4% of the market share, which is still like in the billions in rands, right? If you explain it from that POV and say, okay, if we create this content, at least then we're able to, number one, distribute on YouTube annually, right? And annually you'll get like an amount. I know we get like roughly like it's and we haven't posted anything since since 20 freaking 17. Damn. But we get an amount from YouTube every year, get revenue. How are you going to get the revenue back? What that investment is going to do, right? You show them the process of it all, and you have a clear understanding of the budget and the numbers, more than the fluff of how beautiful the design looks, how amazing the story is. More than that, investors want to know that their funds are secure. Okay. So you need to present that information. And that's how I lead my conversation. I don't start with the beautifulness of my drawings and design. I start with the funds. And then I look at the opportunities that are within the industry and the trends that are currently happening. And I use that to then rope them in. Once they hooked, then I show them the content and I say, this is how we're going to tap into this market because these guys, we like this kind of content, and this is how they behave, you know? So you need to do your research as well, guys, when you're having these conversations with investors, because essentially all they are people with money, and people with money want to invest, but they want to know that they'll get their money back. And you need to be confident in, you know, what's going on, man? They keep getting kicked out. Oh, oh, what the hell is going on? Throw this laptop away. Um, but yeah, so essentially that's what you need to consider all, you need to do your research and consider all parts and like the entire scope of information. Um, and it's not something that you do easily. I mean, part of it also relies on your personality. You need to be a people's person. You need to be able to connect with people. You need to be charismatic and you need to be confident. When people see you, they need to know that, yo, this person knows what they're talking about, and they need to believe in what it is that you're saying, and then they'll be confident to invest. I always tell my students that the world doesn't run on money, it runs on confidence, right? If the world is not confident in South Africa, people are not going to invest. Why? Because they're afraid that, hey, there's a lot of crime, for instance, or there's a lot of political unrest, and that stuff makes people not so confident in investing, even though they know they'll make a profit there. So you need to, gain that confidence. You need to also sell yourself really well, and that takes practice. Mm.
Always be 100 unless you're donating blood.
I mean, you need to have a business registered so you can operate as a business, right? Unless you're a freelancer. Then if you're a freelancer, you can just ask people to work and you can pay them and it doesn't have to be formal like that, right? But if you're saying you're running a business and you have an establishment, you need to register it, you need to register and open an account and function as a business because there's tax that's involved. There's, you need to pay your taxes. It borders on tax evasion when you're just employing people and you're saying you've got a business but you don't. It's kind of like fraudulent. It borders on criminal time. Dio and I trying to be a criminal, man. Huh? I'm kidding. But you have to have everything set up as it's like legally should be set up for you to function as a business. Also, people take you seriously that way when they can track you and see, okay, this is you're registered under CIPC, you have a bank account, all of that information. Yeah. So the Dipopaai's business model is ever changing. When we started, the first few things we did was just imagine what Dipopaai would look like, right? How we imagined it in our minds. And we started discussing things like, yo, Dipopaai land, Dipopaai merch. And as we're discussing this, we figured, man, Dipopaai is not just an animation studio, it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle studio. It's what we're pushing is how people should behave, because not only are we informing change and content, we're informing the way people live. We're informing the way people speak and engage with each other. We're informing the way people dress. We're informing the way people choose to engage in like fun and how they connect we're doing so many things in that area that it made us look at ourselves differently, not just an animation studio. Like if you look at Disney, for instance, they literally have the entire value chain, the entire value chain. They are a lifestyle brand. They inform how people live, you know. So that's essentially, that was our model. That was the model we were following. But then at the same time, we began to realize that we're operating at a different time than when Disney started, okay? Even a Dipopaai land. What does a Dipopaai land look like now? Is it valuable for us to have property, or is it, maybe does it make more sense for us to look in the virtual space? How does it look now that we have technology? What is it that Dipopaai land represents now? So we had those conversations with regards to where we're taking our like content even. And what are we doing? Are we also playing in the education space? Yes, we are. We want to build an academy where people can learn how to animate, because we've identified an area that, look, in South Africa, animation's expensive and not everyone can afford. I mean, just us having this conversation here, guys, we're privileged. If we're being absolutely honest, we're part of the minority of people that would love to get into animation but can't, or the people that can do it. We're the minority. How do we then grow this industry? We need to train and educate, right? We need to lower the barriers of entry into animation, and what that will do is it'll increase workforce. And what that'll do is it'll increase a demand for this content. So now animation won't be looked at as just buys for kids, right? It's just something that kids consume. Now it's going to be looked at as an industry where people can actually earn a living and live and sustain themselves and their families. That changes everything. So we've had to look at all of these areas of how we approach animation as Dipopaai Studios and try be unconventional. So I spoke about value proposition earlier on. This is our value proposition now, to say, hey man, as a business, it's a lifestyle, okay? And yeah, we're finding innovative ways to say, guys, this thing is really what will change a lot of the socioeconomic issues in our country right now, you know. Yeah, and I just want the second. Yeah. Please add, Ginny. Mm. Mm. That's a very valid point. I usually reference the hip hop industry in South Africa. I mean, if we go back 20 years, 23 years ago, I mean, hip hop was tough. We didn't have that many hip hop artists. What was booming was Kwaito. But what happened is artists and companies came together and they built a lifestyle. I don't know, most of you guys probably might not know. I'm also revealing my age. But events and things like Slaghuis, which then brought in now, because Slaghuis was an event hosted in Soweto where a lot of artists were birthed, the likes of your Pro Kids, like all of these guys come from that, and it became a culture, it became a lifestyle. Every weekend there was a Slaghuis event and people came to that. And what happened was brands and sponsors like Colgate, Danone, and all these guys saw an opportunity there, because what they essentially wanted is the market. They don't care about hip hop or whatever. They care about the audience, because the audience has the buying power. So what they did is they started investing into hip hop. And that's what happened. That's when it started growing and became an industry. And then the likes of your AKAs and all of that started coming out of that, and growing into the industry that we have now. Radio, which is another industry, was like, oh, flip. this hip hop music has a culture, it has a following. Let's play it. And seeing it, well, seeing the views or the numbers or the people, the listeners rather, because it's radio, seeing the listeners and the revenue that's generating kind of gave it life to grow beyond what it was. So now you've got alcohol brands that are like, damn, there's an audience, there's a market for us to make money. Let's invest in these events. Now you've got a Bacardi party, you've got a Jameson sponsoring, but it all started with just these groups of guys that had this lifestyle that they liked. This is how they lived. They consumed this content, they believed in it. And essentially, the market came in and it became a business over time. Now, I mean, right now, it's a booming business. The way people dress is hip hop now. In any, we could be talking about house, talking about mapiano, but the way people dress, they dress in hip hop. The way people speak, it's hip hop. It's a lifestyle. It's a culture. That's how I see animation. That's how I see us and what we're doing, right? We also have a way in which we communicate, a way in which we engage. You know what I mean? That's what we need to be selling. Yes, we've got our own humor, man. There's a lot of banter between us that's you won't find in any other or many other industries. We have a culture, and the more we start like sustaining ourselves, and the more we start being present, the more events we have, the more we create a demand. You know, that's when yeah, we'll see a huge boom in the animation space. But yeah. Hmm. Yes. I think that's a no-brainer. I mean, when you have funds, you have leeway to do anything that you want to do, right? So that's usually what limits anyone. It's the fun. So if you have that access, then I mean, you're a step ahead. Mm, mm, mm. Remember, your duty as an artist is to solve problems all the time. So you're continuously finding solutions. Yeah. Uh, so like again, there's no one size fits all. It depends on what it is you're trying to do in that particular time. So you may be trying to create 10 2-minute episodes for YouTube. That'll cost differently from someone that's trying to create a 27 minute 10 27 minutes. You know, it's not a one size fits all. But rounds of funding is like, yeah, we've only, I think it was one, but primarily our business relied heavily on the corporate uh, service work. So we realized that as a business, for us to make sense or for us to sustain ourselves, 2/3 of our business needs to service clients. So what we did was we created ourselves, we made ourselves appealing to advertising agencies, to brands like Urban Brew, who deal primarily in like, you know, film, live action. We were like, yeah, I mean, these guys need a bit of animation in like their titles, in, you know, you've got lower thirds coming in. We're able to create those little lower thirds that put your name and say, hey, my name is what, but how we do it, you know. Or for instance, what's going on? Yeah. Hey guys, yeah. So we we figured out ways to you know, we identified opportunities where we could use animation as a tool. Remember guys, animation, don't only think of animation in the entertainment sense, right? You can do three things with animation. You can inform, you can educate, and you can entertain. Where a lot of us struggle is we look at animation from the fun side of things, where it's like, yeah, we just want to, you know, make a nice animation, 2-3 minutes, or just to entertain people and tell our story. But we don't think of areas like, I mean, I look at Cablo Studios, for instance. Their focus is medicinal, pharmaceutical animation. That's their forte. So they're giving information about medicine, and using animation as a tool to communicate that, which is brilliant, you know? So we also identified an area like, yeah, man, this is a tool to communicate. Advertising companies, they deal with brands. Brands have a budget for TV, right? Which is their like online stuff, and then they have offline stuff, and then they have social media stuff. And on social, what works? It's in and out, quick animation skits, all of that stuff. That's what works. And so that's essentially where we were like, okay, this is what's going to sustain our business. So we have clients that we service, and it's not really work that we want to show off or we want to put out there, because it's not. It's straight to the point, you know. And then the other third, so the 1/3 of our business, then that's our IP. So 2/3 service work, 1/3 IP. And then we have a model for funding where we'll obviously look out for government funding, because unlike many countries, we're fortunate as South Africa to have funding organizations like the NFVF, the NAC, the GFC, Gauteng Film Commission, National Arts Council, National Video and Film Foundation, National Youth Development Agency. All of these bodies are there to fund not just animators or anything, but fund entrepreneurs and startups and SMMEs. So we're fortunate enough to have that kind of support, but it's not a model that you can rely on, because it's taxpayers' money at the end of the day, and sometimes the funds are delayed. When there's a national disaster, it affects that money. And usually these organizations take time to give you funds, and they don't give you funds the way you like lump sums, like, hey, here's 100K, go in. They usually break them down into tranches. And I don't think that's a sustainable business model. I know companies that do live off of that, but it creates this dependency that I don't like. I think as a business, your job is to make a profit, not to be a charity case. Okay. All you need to do is get that once, get the next product, do the same, and eventually it multiplies, and that's it. Yeah, that's just a personal thing. I am not, frowning upon people that, prefer that safety net of just, looking for funding from NFVF and all of that stuff. That's good. It helps. It's free money. Go for it. Have it as part of your plan, but I'd advise for you not to have it as your only plan. Always find multiple ways to make money, so that if one fails, you at least have others coming in. So you're not a sunken ship. Yeah. Yeah. You can apply for funding. You're taken seriously in that space. I mean, yeah, it also depends on the type of company you are, right? So there's a sole proprietorship, which essentially means you're the only person that owns shares in that company. Usually that is that is the least desirable kind of company, because everything relies on you. Should you, God forbid, die, the business is over, you know? So I always advise people to have what do you call this, a PTY or an LTD, private or public company, but make sure you're not the only one that is in the company. Most of these funding agencies are reluctant to fund sole proprietorships. They may give you funding, but it will be like small money. It won't be what you're asking for, or even close. So yeah, it's something that I've also just being in these rooms, I've also overheard in many instances where they're like, it's a sole proprietorship. No, at least have room for other partners. So in the event that anything happens to you, at least the business will still keep going. That gives them confidence. And yeah, I mean, having a business just, I mean, it makes you formal. Even when you are asking for funding from sponsors and all these guys, it just makes you feel and seem more reliable. That you have an establishment, you have a bank account, you have an address, your place of work where we can find you. If we need you, we know where we can find you. You have a logo, you have a slogan, you have a vision and a mission statement. You have employees, if you have employees, you have a body of work. I mean, you have proof of your existence. It really helps in that regard, yeah. And also, it helps with like doing business with other businesses. It literally puts you. I've been in so many rooms because I just have a business. You know what I mean? So, yeah, yeah. Hello.
I have a question.
Shucks. I was like, is it doing its thing again? No. Yeah. Yeah. Nice question, man. I don't think if I go through the list right now, we're gonna be chatting till tomorrow. But one of the things I think is as animators, what we tend to do is we work in silos, and that's never good for any for growth. You know what I'm saying? One of the reasons why I decided to go teach animation, to go and just focus primarily on the business of animation, was to talk about these things and try and get the industry together, like bring everyone together, because what that then does is um, uh, I mean, like we just made an example of the hip hop industry, right? When the artists started coming together, that's when we had an industry, right? But if you're there in your own little corner doing your own thing, yes, you will be surviving, you will make money, you'll sustain yourself as a business, but overall, as an industry, it's I mean, it defeats the purpose. So the more we can like come together and have events that, or have a community rather, which is why I'm happy that Genie SADC exists. It's to build that community, to build that, and when we do that, it's easier now for us to then leverage and get more funding and get more attention into what it is that we do, because now what does that mean? It means there's a demand for it, right? So that's one of the things that I feel like we can do better in our industries. Like we need to build more communities, as well as sharing. When you share information, like for instance, it took me all of these years, 7 years, to figure out these things of how to start a business, what to do, how to think, where to go to get investors, all of that stuff. That information wasn't given to me. It was information that I had to make countless mistakes and figure out. Now, with that information and that insight, if I keep that to myself, it's a waste. But if I can give these tools to someone else, they don't need to go through 7 years of trying to do it. Now you've just got, okay, you're starting now, you've got this information, you're like, okay, cool. How do I move? Dipopaai did it like this. Let me do it like this. It speeds up the process. Now we've got a bunch of studios coming up because why? They have the information. One of the things, I mean, even this business lesson is quite surface level, or this presentation is quite surface level. If we were to go in depth, which I think we should, I'll do more sessions like this with you guys. But if we go in depth, there's a lot of things that a lot of us don't know in terms of just how to conduct ourselves in business, how to move and how to operate. There's still a lot of demystifying that needs to happen around the business of animation space. How to pitch, how to sell yourself, what to do. And this is stuff that you need to practice to understand, and you need to be around people doing it to understand. Hence, the community aspect of it is so important. So that's one of the things that I'd like to really like right now. We need more communities. We need more events where we can socialize. Because another thing is, I mean, how there's better ways to have fun, I'm not a club guy. I don't like going to clubs. I feel like they're weird, just standing around, sipping, talking over loud music. It's weird. But I do appreciate like drawing sessions, like the Loba movement, events where we come together, we draw. Yeah, maybe there's like something to drink and there's good music, but we're drawing. I like that. More events of that nature, you know what I'm saying? That events that speak to animators and build the community. That's something that I think we need to like just do more of. Unfortunately, COVID kind of killed a lot of that. But now we're getting back into things, right? That I'd like to see more events like that and more conversations around animation in that space and not just what Disney did or the latest Disney movie. Come on. Um, what is the second question? Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Let's chat.
First off, that was amazing. Great speech, great presentation, everything. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Um, hey Dion, can you ask the question again, bro? I really thought that was kind of interesting.
Hey, Ste. Can everyone? Yeah. Hey, Ste. Thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. And I'm not a criminal, I promise. Uh, there was if you don't mind, if like depending on the questions, I'd like to hear more of the answer of Tabo's question late when we have time. I'm sure there's a lot of other
Mhm.
questions because I think it's something that should be discussed more about what we come together and choose what to change. But my question was, apart from that one, there are a lot of successful stories of creatives never giving up on their dreams and ideas. When do you think you need to restructure and sideline that dream to focus on what is going to grow your business? Then once you've decided to do that, then what do you think? When do you think you should take on that sideline gig again?
Yeah. Um, Yeah, I think you've touched on a quite a valid point there. So one of the things is as animators by nature, because animation, when you're an animator, you're considering so many parts, right? Your character designs, lighting, layout, environments. You're considering all of these things, right? As you're creating whatever it is that you're creating. But what I found in business is you need to let go of certain parts. You don't need to do every single thing yourself, right? You need to get people that will um, help you make your business easier because sometimes, I mean, sometimes all you want to do is just draw characters, right? And sometimes there's just people that all they want to do is just look at the books. It's finding all of these guys, right, that will help this process so you don't have to really do everything. I think that's one thing that another characteristic I found in animators that like it's yeah, it kind of becomes an Achilles heel because you burn out. You burn out over 10 years. I mean, I remember I was arguing with a friend of mine, and he was saying he wants to be an entrepreneur because that means he's a boss. He gets to run himself. So he's going to quit his job and do that. And I was like, but as an entrepreneur, I mean, as an employee, you've got one boss, maybe a manager and one boss. As an entrepreneur, you've got 10 bosses, which are all your clients that you're servicing, right? And if you're consistently servicing these clients, and these clients are crazy, they've got so many demands. In 10 years, you're gonna burn out. You are gonna burn the hell out. So the job of an entrepreneur is to build systems so that they themselves don't have to do all of that stuff. They can just focus on the things that bring them joy, which in my case is telling stories, you know? So you build systems that bring in people that handle parts of your business so that you just focus on that one area. That's essentially what you are. You are building systems. And once you've understood how to build a system, you can build multiple systems. And that's essentially the job of an entrepreneur, you know? So that's what I've identified as a way to avoid burnout, a way to avoid, because I could see myself like losing the passion for it, you know? Because I mean, you still get the challenges of the funding, you still get challenges of, like it's a lot of work, you don't have time, your sleeping patterns are off, your health is getting affected. It's just a lot of things that you must consider. Yes, what you're doing is beautiful, it's fun, but you need to also consider stuff like you're aging, you know? You're aging. So maybe when you're young, you still have the fire, the passion, but the older you get, it weighs on you. So, and I remember after that conversation, he was like, "Oh shucks, okay, I think I might just, reconsider." I'm like, "Yeah, it's bigger than just, yeah, I'm gonna run, I'm gonna come up with these innovative ideas." No, your job is to essentially, excuse me, your job is essentially to build systems. That's all you need to focus on. And unfortunately, when you build systems, you're drawing less initially, right? You're focusing all of your energy on, like, what is this business like? Setting it up, creating logos, as I said, creating logos, creating pitch decks and pitch decks that you're going to send, proposals that you're going to send to clients, finding the right language to use, advertising yourself. And in that process, unfortunately, you're not animating much. You're doing other things, you know?
Thanks, there. Appreciate it.
Yeah, did I answer your question, Dion? I think I might have also just derailed a bit.
For the most part, I appreciate it. There's a lot of questions coming up. Maybe sometime later down the line, we can discuss it more.
Yeah.
Thanks, there.
No, you're absolutely right. We need to engage in these conversations a lot more. It can't just be a once-off chat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
please.
Wondering,
If I may
um,
share something, say your work was very relatable, to be honest.
Mm.
What you said is being a problem solver, but running a business. Make sure you can support yourself before trying to run yourself ahead. You first have to know how to walk first. I'm a
Mm.
university student and I got my bachelor's degree not because I paid for the best programs and got the best teachers to help me. I was facing problems. I used open source programs. I've looked at YouTube
Mm.
videos. I've found things on the internet that's just a Google search away, and half of the stuff are the things that I expected to be paid for from university, and it's just no, they were just pointing me in a direction of where to look. The information is
Mm.
there. It's just a matter of knowing where to go and what to learn.
Mm. Mm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
you had mentioned before about the whole government funding and whatnot, and
Mm.
I am of the opinion that currently, with NFVF and all these other government agencies that like tend to sponsor the art industry, is that the that they initially give us is pennies. So I'm wondering, how do you think like we artists and the animation industry in general can like motivate the government to give us more realistic funding? Because 100K for visual development is not enough. Straight up. So
Hey,
man,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah. That is a big challenge. So part of us having these communities and having these engagements, right, is us also educating these guys. A lot of the time, the people that work for these organizations, right, they are employees. They just care about salaries. Most of them have no cooking clue about animation and the processes involved. I mean, I once, I think we pitched 2 years ago we pitched for just development funding, and it went up to 1.2 million. And they said the response we got from them was, no, that's 1.2 million rand. That's feature film money, not development money. And I was like, what? What?
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So
they
it's also
wish.
our responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah, like it's also our responsibility as a community to engage in, like, they have these stakeholder meetings regularly, which I attend. And even though most of the time it feels like it's a waste of time because you hear the same things over and over, but it's important for us to attend those events, to attend those conferences and those conversations, and be there and ask the difficult questions. I mean, in the most recent one I was involved, I was invited to, was the Gauteng Film Commission, and they had the CEO of SABC, they had the MEC, they had all of these big people, government influential people. Yeah, the decision makers were there, and I posed one question to David Makubiane, who's the head of content at SABC. Like, yo, David, so just tell me, it's the year 2022. What is SABC's strategy around animation and gaming? Man, did they not dance? Like, I didn't get a response. They were just dancing around circles. They were just like, his response was, so, gentlemen, I am not the only representative of SABC here. My colleague is right there behind you. She'll be able to help. I'm like, okay, your response lets me know that you don't know. Therefore, it's my responsibility to inform you. Okay.
Wow.
And now I need to be knowledgeable. And I'm informing you. I need to know. And when I do bring this information, it needs to be backed up. So I need to do my research. Another thing, which is, I just thought of this now. Yeah, another thing that's very, very important, guys. We need to discuss how we're costing our content, okay? Because that then affects our value. If I charge 50K for visual development, and then you come and you charge 500K for visual development, who's gonna get all the visual development work? Me.
You.
Yes, but what that does is it takes our industry down. Now that's the amount of visual development in South Africa. It's 50K because there's people like Sithembiso that are saying, yeah, 50K for visual development. That's bad. That's bad. So we need to communicate about, like, around these things. So I have relationships with studios where if there's a call out that comes out, or there's a huge client like Netflix that is sort of sifting around trying to figure out who to work with, and who to partner up with, and they come with costs. I mean, Urban Brew does this a lot. They do this a lot because they're always trying to cut costs. They'll call and say, "Hey, we've got this new show. It's going to be on SABC 3. We need 10 animation skits, 5 minutes each from you." But we spoke to Hidden Hand Studios, and Hidden Hand Studios said to do it for us for 100,000. You know, but they lying. They haven't spoken to Hidden Hand Studios. They're just trying to get the money. They're just trying to just undercut us,
Cheap.
because then it's gonna be like, oh, if they're giving you for 100, we'll give you for 90K, so we can get the gig. So what we do is we communicate with each other, like we'll call each other and be like, hey man, did you get a call from Urban Brew? Yeah, I got the call from Urban Brew. What did they say? No, they said this. Then we respond from a level where we sort of have our own price points, because we want to grow the industry. We don't want to work backwards. So when you're busy undercharging clients, guys, consider that. Okay, consider that you're not doing yourself a favor. You're actually working backwards. Um, yeah, that's just the point that I just wanted to make. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like we need to unionize. Mm, they do. It's just a
Practically
drawing.
anyone can do it. Yeah.
Mm, mm,
May I
mm.
jump in?
Yeah, you're sitting there, you're drawing there. Please
Ah,
continue.
Yeah.
it's worse when they see you do it on the computer. They think you just put in numbers.
You know?
I just do this thing fast.
Speaking of
Hello?
small incomes and stuff like, uh, are there any ways you can like tips on generating small tips on generating an income on art or animation, even if it's a small income? Just how to do it while you're still working on your resume, stuff like that. Just basics that most people know from the get go.
Yeah. So how I started in animation was it was just when Twitter was getting popular, right? And I was like, okay, now that Twitter's popular, people have different profile pictures, right? And I targeted celebrities. I was like, if I make caricatures of celebrities, they have a following, right? If I do maybe a caricature of, say, Somizi or Gareth Cliff or whoever, you know, and I do it for him for free. I don't charge him for it. All I just say is, hey man, I'm a fan. I love your work. Here's a caricature. Make it your profile picture. People will then ask him, yo, that's cool. Who did that for you? And then he'll direct them to me. Ah, no, this guy did that for me. And then now I'm doing caricatures. That's how I essentially started. That was my first. I just did caricatures and I was making money. You know, I was charging around like 500, $400 for a caricature. And I was getting like seven, eight clients a week, you know? And this is me in varsity. Yeah, it was just me trying to figure out ways to use this tool to sort of just earn an income. So you also have to like be creative about what you're doing. Look at what's happening and like identify opportunities. Remember, you're always solving problems as an artist, right? And doing stuff like caricatures doesn't take too long. Doesn't take too long. You could trace a face quickly, and then work on it however you can, but you just develop something that you can around real quickly. That's one way that you can earn an income. Maybe Jeannie, you can also throw in some of your tips that you've done as an animator, illustrator. Mm.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very
Great.
much. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Well,
You're
I'm
welcome.
curious. I'm curious. So once the Dipopaai studio gets invested to support a project, how does the Dipopaai studio then turn a profit from it? Do you sell it to, say, a channel like Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon, or
Hmm. So yeah. Um, So mainly our profit comes from service work that we create, right? Because then we cost it at like a 15% profit margin. You know, we yeah, we don't really make any profit from our IP because we're still developing our IP. The last IP that we put out was Chronicles of Hip Hop, which was an online. Well, let me actually not say that. We we have IP that we've put out. We've got one now called This Wonderful World, which is airing on eTunes as well as SABC. And we're not. You also need to also understand that sometimes you need to make sacrifices to generate an income, right? What you want more than anything is the viewership and the eyeballs. So what we did is we created this IP and we partnered up with a broadcaster because they have eyeballs. Now that becomes sort of an advertisement for what we do. And now that the content is out there, now we're able to sell stuff. We're able to now sell products. We're able to sell when, like just now in the beginning of COVID, we were selling masks because we had the show on eTunes. And now we're like, okay, even though with eTunes, our relationship is not a paid relationship, it is a we're getting what do you call this research and data from them as well as market value in terms of them marketing our content. We're now able to go into schools and primary schools to our audience directly because they've seen the thing on TV and they identify with it. So if we say here's a mask for 20 rand versus those normal masks that you'll get for 5 rand or 2 rand, they'll buy the 20 rand one because of the brand and what it stands for and who it speaks to, you know. So um that was one of the ways we generated an income, and also looking at different ways to generate an income. I believe in owning your IP. I don't believe in licensing it for a period of time. So all the IP we create, we own. We don't sell our IP to anyone. We license it, and Disney and all these big studios, they prefer to buy content and own it. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing overall because I mean you could sell your first IP. I'm not married to any of my ideas. I mean it's an idea. An idea is an idea and is an idea, you know. Um, I'm not married to anything, and all of you guys need to be that way. Don't be married to your work, okay? Don't be too married or too attached. You'll make bad decisions if you're moving from that POV.
And
But
it'd be
what we
like
do
having your own
is,
kids.
pardon?
I'm sorry. You can go carry on.
No, please repeat that. I didn't hear that. Please repeat
It,
it.
I like to think of my artworks as a kid, like the promising baby stage, the dreams you have, and they get that teenage stage where they get it on purpose, and then they reach adulthood. When you're done with it, you have to let it go. Don't let it stay rent free in your house. Kick them out and let them do their own thing.
Yes, let them go and let them, flourish. But then
Exactly.
what that does is once you've received that first cash injection for selling that IP, you're now able to then move comfortably and create the work that you want, how you want, because you have that capital injection from the first project that you've sold, right? So I believe, I mean, the legacy or the sustainability long term for any business in animation is IP. If you don't own your IP, like what are your chances of survival in 10 years, 30 years? It's like a musician that doesn't own their royalties. Yes, you'll get gigs when you do shows, you'll get money when you do your shows and stuff like that. But when you're old, like your royalties won't come to you. So when you own IP, you're able to. I mean, I look at Tom and Jerry, for instance. I watch some episodes that I used to watch as a kid to this day. That stuff is still generating an income. Whoever owns that IP, which is Warner Brothers, right? They're always going to generate income from that stuff that they created 20, 30 years ago. So I really think it's important to own your IP, but also don't be married to it. If a deal comes or an opportunity presents itself where you're able to, like give it away for the betterment of your business long term, do it. Do it. But yeah, so with us, our main profit comes from service work, as well as we've got the government model where we get funding from, your government organizations, and then we've got our own IP, which we generate a little income from on YouTube. You know, we get an annual income from YouTube because we have about 15,000 subscribers on YouTube, and about over 1 million views on our content collectively. So there is some demand and something happening there. So that's essentially how we survive. But mainly, I could say 90, if not even 90, 70% is service work.
Um, I think you answered like Dion's initial question because he was basically asking, and I thought this question was rather interesting. He was asking, "Good, so when do you know if it's time to focus on IP work or do service work?" And I think that
Mm,
whole what you just said now really covered that. Like I suppose it's based on what your personal needs are at the moment or at that specific point in time
mm,
in
mm,
business.
mm. So another thing to think about, how to think about IP, right? IP, maybe you come up with the show. You need to look at that show as a business as well, outside of your own business. I'll make an example. Dipopaai produces a lot of shows, right? Each show has its own like business plan, has its own business model. This one in particular, Wazi, speaks to a younger demographic. When we created this show, we were like, we need to see more African kids, like a kid informant with vitiligo that speaks to Africans and educates them on like just anything and just all this information. And then COVID happened, and we were like, there is no information that's coming out that's clear for children about this pandemic. So everything that's coming out is daunting, and parents aren't able to also communicate because they also don't know what's going on. It's all happening so fast. So then this character then came in and was the sort of the bridge to the gap to say, okay, we've got this character. She's going to give all the information about COVID in a language that kids can understand. So that is its own business model. That is its own, it has its own social media handle. It has its own team that work on it. It has its own, it works on its own. If someone wants to invest, they can invest in IP in Wazi as its own brand and its own company, but it is owned by Dipopaai. You know what I mean? So therefore, it makes it easier for us to then sell it, not having to sell our business. You know,
Okay.
we're then like, okay, Wazi is worth 5 million based on the research that we've done and based on the work that it's done. But we still have other IPs under us. We've got Chronicles, we've got Survival Island, we've got all these shows that are businesses. All of them are all registered as businesses and they copywritten. But at the top of it all is Dipopaai, the productions, the studio that owns them all, you know? So a lot of studios, what they do is they tend to, well, the startups, they make their IP the company, like the main company. And it's like, no, separate your IP from the company. Because even when investors come in, you want investors to invest in the IP, the development of the IP, not your company itself. Um, I don't want to confuse you guys too much. But let me know if I'm making sense.
Okay.
It actually makes a lot of sense.
Does it make sense? Are you getting what I'm saying, right? If
Yeah,
I'm an
it might be a lot.
It sheds light on quite a lot.
Mm.
yes, yes. If I'm an investor
Hello.
coming to you and investing money, right? If you say, if I invest in Dipopaai, that means I own a part of Dipopaai. Therefore, all the IP that's under Dipopaai, I have a stake in. However, if Dipopaai says no, invest in our IP, then that's the only thing I have a stake in. Dipopaai is not bound to the investor. We can still do what we want to do, how we want to do it. But the investor then has a stake in the product.
Mm. Mm.
Yes. Yeah.
Reminds me a lot of this. Yes. Okay.
Um, can you guys hear me?
Hey, Sandile, what's up, man?
How you doing today?
I'm all good and you, my guy. Nice to hear from you.
Uh, I'm good. I'm good. I just wanted to ask about like the industry overall, being that you probably have more information. You have more knowledge than me. What do you think the industry in South Africa right now currently needs the most in order for it to grow?
Oh yeah, man. Thanks for that question. It just takes me back to the community, bruh. We need more communities discussing animation, and we need animators sharing. Share your work, share your process, share how you've done it, teach people, get the conversation going. That way, we'll get more stakeholders involved and we'll see more money coming in. You know what I'm saying? Um, that's essentially what I think the industry needs, bro. Because we have talent, you
Yeah.
know, we have access to
Mm-hmm.
information, and we're just not sharing it as much.
Mm.
Mm.
So would you say that? So would you say that maybe people who are getting into animation, whether they be like graduates or whatever, do they need to have a mindset of they want to be employees, or have a business mindset like yourself, or do they have to have a balance of for both, if I may say?
Yeah. Hey man, it's really up to the individual. You need to decide whether you want to be. That's why it was important for me to take you through the three roles, right? And there's none that's better than the other. They all have their pros and they all have their cons. But I mean, it's important for you to decide which area you're strong in and focus on that. You know what I'm saying? Um, I think the more entrepreneurs we have, obviously, the more the industry will grow, and the more employees we have, because we need technicians, we need skilled people that can do the job, without any hesitation. We also need skilled business people that can be in the rooms and discuss and have these conversations from an informed POV. So it's really like it's good for you to have the insight and have the knowledge of how it all works and then decide from there. But we just need, yeah, we really just need more people engaging in conversations like this and engaging in community driven um, like projects that are around animation. Yeah.
Say I agree completely with you, but if I could just ask something added on to that, please, regarding having more people having starting businesses and being more business minded, I agree completely. But there's also the other side of it. Do you think maybe that too many businesses could saturate the field, and that because that happens, do you think that other businesses and other studios won't get funded and won't have enough manpower to build because everybody's trying to do their own thing? So that instead of everyone coming together to create something great and sharing with the world and each other, do you think that maybe everybody's trying too hard to do their own thing and everyone's failing because they don't have the manpower or the funding?
Yeah. So your question is also like in twofold. It's a dope question. I think the market is huge, bruh. Like I think the market is so huge. We need more people. We need more voices coming into the animation space. Dude, in South Africa alone, we have 11 official languages. Okay. Each of those languages is a market. If you decide now, I'm going to make animated content for Chitsonga, in Chitsonga, for the Chitsonga community, boom, and you focus on that, that's where you're headed, right? If you decide, no, I'm going to focus on this community, that's already like we need more of studios tapping into these untapped markets. The problem here is everyone is trying to funnel into one way of doing things, and that's when we get the bottleneck situation because everyone wants to get the funding, everyone wants Disney, everyone wants to do to create content that speaks to what like Disney, Warner Brothers, what the big guys are doing. But not too many people are thinking of the other opportunities that exist, like creating content for Africa. For instance, Swahili is the most spoken language in Africa. creating content in Swahili. You've got an untapped market there. It's just everyone wants to be on the fast lane, and then you realize why is like the fast lane is moving so slow. That's because all the other lanes are empty, but everyone is going the same route and doing it the same way. So I think the more we are, the better it is, because then there's going to be more things to discover, new ways of doing things. Um, and the more we're communicating that way, there's not going to be that much like it's not going to be like, oh, it's so competitive. I used to think that way, right? I used to think that way. Yes, please add.
Mm.
Mm. Mm. Hmm. You
So
know.
essentially, it is a little competition won't hurt. Actually, healthy, keeps you
Mm.
motivated. But when it gets the resources get limited because there's so many people, too many animals at the watering hole, it might be best to start looking for other places where you might thrive better.
Mm. 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 Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
Sure.
Mm.
There's actually a game
Thank
company
you.
I
Thank you,
recall
guys.
that had a lot of things in common. All of this reminds me of this game company that did something a lot similar to all of this. It might be a good example to look at. They were animation students at the very beginning, and they made student games, which were had a bit of success local wise up until when Sony came up to them and asked them to make 3 games, a 2-year contract, which got them going in a big way. They made leaps and bounds with these 3 games. The best one of the 3 was called Journey, their masterpiece. Once they finished the contract, they were burnt out because of the constraints of the investment that Sony wanted, the quality they were expecting. And once the contract was over, they moved on to their own IP and they made their own game called Sky, which was an
Mm.
amazing game. It's still successful to now. It's been running for 3 years, and they've learned their lessons, came back stronger. And one of the good examples is even if Journey was so successful and it's their game, they couldn't use the character or be associated with the brand in any way because Sony still owns it. They can't use it.
Mm,
But they've still made do with their own games, making new ways to spread awareness. And one of the ones they're doing right now is asking people around the world to host their own conventions. And if Sky knows about it, they would send goodies to them. And in a way,
mm,
Sky would sponsor these little friendship conventions where you can meet people and bring awareness to making communities of your own.
mm. Absolutely. Mm,
I mean, like it's if you just think about like what's been happening or the trends that we've been seeing in the animation industry, like entertainment specifically in the West, like America, where people, the animators in the industry have been like complaining about wanting to make different types of stories, different looking stories. People are tired of Disney. People are tired of friendly content. And so like there's like this big emergence. It's happened twice of like of adult content. And yes, it's like ugly looking the your typical like visual development with the big eyes and the really weird kind of deformed looking faces and bodies. But people are like urging like the West there to create more different types of content. And there's this admiration coming from Japan, especially, where there's like such a huge variety of content that consumers that side can immerse themselves in. Like we have so many different genres and we have subgenres and we have subgenres of subgenres
mm,
in the manga and anime community. And there's literally something for everybody there, and the market isn't declining. It's growing
mm,
because it's
mm.
diversifying itself. So yeah, it's like Fair and Jeannie have been saying is diversity, variety is
The spice of life.
it's benefit. It's a
It's,
benefit.
yeah, it's not really a bad thing to have too many. I was having a conversation with Tim from Triggerfish, the founder, the CEO of Triggerfish, and he was saying the same thing. He said this to us in 2016. He said he would like to see more African animation or animation studios. And I asked him why, and he said because it benefits him if there's an industry.
Yeah.
And I didn't get it when he said it at the time, but now I'm like, yes, the more they are, the better it is for my business, you know? Because there's a lot of animation studios, now the NFVF is compelled to have what they have now, which is an animation slate, which is now 7.5 million worth of funding that goes into animation. Why? Because there's a demand for it. There are studios in place now. There are people that really need this funding. So the more of us there are, the more we can impact that kind of change.
For you,
You know what I mean?
I'll
So
do anything.
yeah,
Who's Roger?
nice question, Dion.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you, everyone who
Shouldn't
helped
something
answer
that
that
flies
question.
have
And
wings?
I'm just asking Ezzy to just understand all the different points of view because I see there's pros and
Oh,
cons.
it's
In my
getting
opinion,
hot
I
in
see there's pros
here.
and cons in both.
Roger that.
Because
Will
as you
someone tell
mentioned,
me who Roger
because
is?
there are studios that are established that got the
Waiting
ball
do
rolling
fight.
for the NFVF, and then they started funding more and having more business models for all these different pitches and studios to approach them for funding. So, is it not maybe better to have more people coming together to create bigger projects together? And once they are established, South Africa, once they
Mm.
have established South Africa more and built something unique or brought more funding and more eyes looking at South Africa, don't you think then, well, of course, not the only diversity, but don't you think then diversity should be okay? You've done this now, go make your own thing in that side. You've done this, go make your own thing in that side. I know there's jobs in everything, and
Na wahala be
it's
this
it's
so.
it's it's doable to pick up almost all of these different things. But when people are hunkering down and doing what they do, Like, I'm not gonna leave concept arts and I'll go and be a 3D animator.
No
I
condom,
put
no
too many
show.
hours in it and I
Stop
see
the
growth in it. And I'm sure there's
spread
a
of
lot of people
AIDS.
out there, yeah, in this chat that would probably not do the same thing. Not to say it's impossible that no one will, but do you get where I'm going with this? Sometimes don't you think it is better to come together to make a bigger change, to get the eyes on Africa because our
Yeah,
economy is
yeah,
that strong,
yeah.
and when you see